sometimes you want to carry out a process, and that process requires doing it over and over and over again without making so much changes in each of the process. That is where a loop comes in. So what is a loop? To explain loop, it is better to use an example. So without a loop, if I want to print 1 to 100, this is what I would do. I would need to say print 1, print 2, print 3, print 4, print 5, then print 95 more lines. Like I'm going to have to repeat this print in 95 more lines. And when I print it, I'm going to see what it will bring out in the output. And that is how I would have done printing 1 to 100 without a loop. But with a loop, I just need to say for I in range 1, then I declare the last number. Here you are seeing 101. It is because in Python, you need to add 1 to the last number. So if the last number is 100, in our case, I just need to add 1, making 101. Then the loop will stop at 100. Then I just run it, and that is it. I have all the numbers just in writing 2 lines of code compared to writing 100 lines of code if I wrote all this print statement. So let's move on to really learn understanding the different kind of loops that we have. So the different kind of loops that we have different kind of loops. We have for loop, we have while loop. Those are the two main loops that we have. Then in this tutorial, we're going to explore each of them. So we explore for loop, we're going to look at range and explain what I'm talking about here in the beginning where I started explaining range. I'm going to explain it better. So I'm just going to play this output right here to make things clear. So we'll move to break and continue, which we use in our while loop or in our for loop. Then we're going to see the extended loop use. So let me start with for loop here. Now, for loop is used when you want to iterate over known sequence. For example, if you have a list, if you have a string, or a range of numbers. If you don't understand what a list is, you can check my previous videos where I've explained Python list. So I'll explain this now. So this is range. And one thing about range is that range can return a list if you do it the right way. That is by using the list method and passing the range into it. But we're going to see how that is as we move forward in the video. So here, if I say for I in range 5. So what it's going to do is it's going to select 5 numbers that follow each other in a sequence starting from 0. So it's going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 when I run this loop. So the first thing in for loop is you have the for, then you have the I. The I is what we call like the iterator, or what we call the iterator variable. So the I is a variable, an iterator variable that we always, whenever we print, is going to check, okay, what is the next number in this range, then to capture it as the value of the variable, then print it. So that is how it works. So if I print this, you're going to see 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. For I in range 5, so that is the first one is 0, then you print 0, it captures it, then it will change because it's an iterative variable, so it will change every time the loop runs based on whatsoever sequence will pass into it, whether it's a list, it's a string, or a range of number. So let's see how it works with a list. So with a list, all you just need to do is pass the list instead of using range, as we did in the previous cell. So here you just say fruit equals apple, mango, kiwi. Then when I say for fruit, in fruit. So this, your iterator variable, you can name it anything, but just ensure that it's the same thing that you're printing when you're calling your print function. So when I say run this, you can see it printed apple, mango, kiwi. So for fruit and fruit, that is fruit, pick apple as the first fruit, then printed it, then mango, then kiwi. Then another thing that we look at when we use for loop, for example, is the method called enumerate. And what enumerate does is that instead of just printing the value in the list, we can print the index plus the value. That's why I wrote it here that enumerate equals index plus value. So instead of having just apple, it's going to tell us that apple is on index 0 because in Python you come from 0. So that is 0, 1, 2. So if we do the same thing here, we're still using the fruit. So here, if we then say print I, then I is our iterative variable that is capturing the index because enumerate will return 2 things, capturing the index, then fruit will return the values. So when we print it, we have the index and the value side by side. So you can see this now. I have 0 apple, 1 mango, then on index 2, we have kiwi. Now let's move to range to explain range clearly. So if you look at range here, when I say range 4, what it just does here is the first 4 numbers starting from 0, and that will be printed. But 4 is not going to be part of the number. So if I print this, you're going to see 0, 1, 2, 3. So I wrap this in a list so that I can return a list. So you can see that 0, 1, 2, 3. Then if I use range this way and I pass 2 parameters into the range method and I say 2 and 6. So what this is saying is print numbers starting from 2 and ending at 6. But because Python, when we say 6, it means it will end at 5. So you just deduct 1 from the last number that you pass into the range method. So when I print this, it's going to print numbers starting from 2 to 5. And you can see 2, 3, 4, 5. So start from 2, end at 5. Or when you say 2 and 6 in it, then we stop at 5. That is one number before 6. Then how does this work? So here we pass 2 and 6 into the method, but here now we have 3 values or 3 parameters inside our range. So we have range 0, 10, and 2. So what this means is start from 0, end at 10, but go in steps of 2. This is the first, start from here, end at 10, and like we said before, when we pass 10, it's going to end at 9. Then start from 0, end at 10, but go in steps of 2. So we want to see just even number or numbers that go in the steps of 2. So look at this now. You can see instead of 0, 1, 2, 3, it's printed 0, then it added 2 in steps of 2, 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. And that is another way to use range. And on range, the last one that we'll talk about here on range is if you say print and say range 5, 0, and -1. So here you are saying start from 5, then end at 0. But so that the range we understand what you're saying, that is you're trying to reverse the number, you're trying to reverse it, that is why you pass in -1. So this -1 is helping the range method to understand that instead of going from 0 to 5, or instead of returning an error, I should do 5, 0, -1, that is from 5 to 0. So when I print this, you see 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And here it is not going to show the 0, because in this case, since 0 is the last number, then it's going to move that, it's going to print the number before the last number. So if you pass 0 here, we're going to have 1 as the last number. So start from 5 and end at 0, and in this case, it's going at 1. Then -1 is reversing the list. And that is how the range works. So I believe you are able to get that on how we use range. So now that we've seen range, let us look at a nested for loop, for example. And this nested for loop, we want to print a multiplication table. And this multiplication table, we want to have the row and want to have the column. So if you say row in range, so what would this range do based on the previous explanation on range? Then it will start from 1 and end at 3. So you're going to print it as the row. Then for column in range 1 and 4, that is here row is the iterative variable, then column is the iterative variable. So it's also going to print column that starts from 1 and ends at 3. So what are we doing here is then we now multiply, because it's multiplication table, once you multiply the value in the row multiplied by the column. And what this end is doing is helping us organize things correctly. So let me first remove the end equals the empty quotation. So let me just copy this out and I'll cut this out. Then I'll print this. So this is how it is. So you can see 1, 2, 3, 2, 4, 6, then 3, 6, 9. Okay, so that is multiplication table. You can see 1 times 1, 1 times 2, 1 times 3. Then here you have 2 times 1 as 2, 2 times 2 as 4, 2 times 3 as 6. Then here you have 3 times 1 as 3, 3 times 2 as 6, and 3 times 3 as 9. But to organize it better, the way we're going to print it is to just say, then add the end that we copied out. So this end is going to help us organize it so that we now have them in an organized row and column. So they're going to be beside each other. That is what this end equals empty quote is doing. So when I print this, you can see it's like a multiplication table, and we can increase this to as much as we want. So if I want it to be up to 10, then I'll just say up to 9. Then I'll just run that, and you can see how the multiplication table works. So that is that on the nested loop. So that is the beauty of nested loops. That is, you can pass a loop into another loop depending on how you want to organize your output. So now that we've explored for loops and range, we'll move to while loop. And what is the difference between for loop and while loop? Remember, for for loops, we understand the sequence. We know the sequence. Here, I know the start and I know the end. But for while loop, the difference here is that it will repeatedly execute a block of code as long as the specified Boolean condition remains. So while loop always follow a specific condition. While this condition is true, then continue whatever you are doing. And we're going to see that using this example. So count equals 0. So we declare the variable count and we pass 0 to it. And we then set a condition that is while count less than 5. That is, so long the value that is assigned to count variable is less than 5, continue to print that number. That is, continue to print count. Whatever number is inside count, continue to print it. And while printing it, increase the number in count. So count plus equals 1. What it's just doing is it is increasing the number that you have in count. So here, when it prints the first count, the next count is going to increase the number. Then the number will increase, and that sequence will continue until the number becomes greater than 5. Or greater than or equals to 5. In this case, then it will stop. So here, I believe it's going to print from 0 and stop somewhere at 4. So you can see 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that right there is how it works. So long this condition is true. So immediately this condition is no more true. Immediately the condition became false. The loop stopped. So if you don't do while loop right, and you set a condition that will continue on an infinite loop. So if I do this now, let's say I do this on 10,000. This is just going to continue printing until it gets to 10,000. So that's why you have to be careful when you use while loop, because so long the condition is true, it's going to keep running. Now let's use input validation loop to explain while loop. So here we say while true, and we say age equals an integer, input age. So what we're just doing here, we are setting the loop so that we can type in the number after we run the loop, so to receive an input. That is what we are doing here. That's what the input method is doing. And the condition is if 40 greater than or equals age, less than or equals 50. So to explain this better, it means if age, that's whatever we pass into age, is greater than or equal to 40, or is less than or equal to 50. So it just means that the age must be between 40 and 50. So if that is correct, it's going to print within range. But if that is not true, it's going to print try again. And that loop is going to continue saying try again until we are able to have the number that is between 40 and 50. So let's try this. So you can see age, if I type 65, let me move this up, it's going to say try again. If I try 76, it's going to say try again. You can see the loop continues. If I try 90, it's going to say try again. But now if I type any number between 40 and 50, so if I type 43, you can see the loop stops and it says within range. So that is an example of an input validation loop. So the loop will continue asking me to try again and try again and try again until I get the number. These are This is an example of what they use to build like a guessing game and all sorts. So while loop can really be helpful in that case. So let's talk about the else clause. For the else, we have n equals 1. So we initialize n to be 1, this variable. And we say while n less than or equals to 3, print n, then increase the value in n, just like the example we did before. But the example we did before, if we look at this, we didn't add any other condition. We didn't add any information to let us know that the count is now less than 5. That's where the else statement will come in here. So here we are saying just return something and let us know that it is done. So when we say while n less than 3, print n, then n plus equals 1. That is, print the first value, that is n equals 1 will be printed, then it will increase until it gets to 2. For example, in this case, because 3, we reduce 1 from it, that will be 2, is going to be the last number. So then we print done. So when I print this, you can see 1, 2, 3, then it returned done. So that is what the else statement is doing. If you want to understand if and else, there's another video on this channel that is explaining that clearly. So if you check the channel, you see the video, and it will show somewhere on the video right here. And that is while loop for you, and using the else statement within a while loop. So let's talk about the break and the continue. Maybe you've seen it somewhere in the previous code. So here we use break. And what we are saying is that when this condition is met, the loop should break. If I didn't add break, probably that will continue. So that is what we use to break the loop. That is, after this range is printed, break the loop. So let's see that better. So for break in this case, so break is when a specific condition is met, just break the loop, and that is it. Now to explain continue, this is how it's going to be. So if I say for I in range 6, that is print the number from 0 to 5, and I'll say if I is divisible by 2, continue. So what it means is whenever I is divisible by 2, that is whenever it finds an even number, it should skip the even number and continue to print other numbers except from the even number. So here the interest is to print the odd numbers. So if I remove continue, you're going to see something. Let's say I remove continue, and if I remove continue and I pass the prints the right way somewhere here, and I print, so instead of printing the odd numbers, it's printing the even numbers. But if I come back and I add continue, I'll be able to achieve my goal. So here is going to skip the even number and print just the odd number. So you can say 1, 3, 5. And that right there is the benefit of continue. So what continue is doing is anything that falls into this condition, skip it. Don't print I whenever I, that is whenever the number is divisible by 2, just skip it. So to see the extended use of loop, which is the last thing we're going to be doing here, is to use loop to sum a list and do other things. So here we're going to see summing a list. So we initialize total as 0. Then we say for n in this list, 10, 20, 30, we want to sum it. We can just say total plus equals n. That is n, which is our iterative variable, is going to be n in, so it will capture 10. Then it will add whatever is in n. So total is 0, so it's going to be 0 plus equals 10. That is whatever you find, add it to total. So the first loop is going to run and print 10 and add 10 to the total, then move to 20, add 20, move to 30, add 30. So that is how this works. So then print total. So if I run this, you can see the total is 60. That is 10 plus 20 plus 30. So that is helping us sum a list. That's the benefit of a loop. One of the important things to talk about when we talk about for loops, for example, is list comprehension. And the benefit of list comprehension compared to for loop, that I would say two things. Number one is list comprehension helps you write compact code, while for loops, you will write multiple lines in some cases. Then you just print whatever you want to do. So I'll give you an example of how this code will look if we were to use a for loop. So this code will look this way. If we use a for loop and not list comprehension, so we say we initialize first the list, we say for x in range 5, then squares, then we append whatever output you have into the list, and da 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 da. So, but with list comprehension, this will be faster and it's more compact. So what this is doing is we're saying for x in range 5, that is for each number that is in this range from 0 to 5, so which is going to be 0 to 4, then we say just square the number and return the list, and just return the list containing the squares of that number. So if I print this, we can see here we have 0, 1, 4, 3, 9. So 0 is the first number, 1 square, 2 square, 3 squares, then 4 squares. Then list comprehension with filter. We can also add a specific filter into our list. So here we are saying for x in range 10. So we want to store the number that we want to store x if x is divisible by 2. That is what we want to do here. If x is divisible by 2, we've done it before, just store it. We want to see the even numbers. So I'm going to say print just to see, and I'll say print even so we can see. So it is print evens. And I print, you can see 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. So we're printing just the even number. So this is list comprehension with a filter. Because without the filter, we would have had something different. So if I remove this, it's just going to print all the numbers. But because we need just the even numbers, we add the filter. And that will give us just the even numbers. Now, let's see, how does for loop work with dictionaries? How do we loop through a dictionary? So if you don't understand the dictionary, I have another video on Python dictionaries here on this channel. It is linked somewhere. Then you can go to the channel and just watch the video on dictionaries. So normally dictionaries, they are key value pairs. So for example, in this case, we have Alice as the key, then 95 as the value, Bob as the key, then 82 as the value. So if you want to loop through a dictionary, you usually loop through the key and the value. Then you pass in the dictionary, and I'll ensure that you use this dot items method. It is very important. If it's a dictionary, you need to pass in dot items method. So you say for name, because we want to unwrap the items of the dictionary. That is the key and the value. So if you want to get the key and the values, you must use dot items method. So we say for name and score, that is for key, which is Alex and Bob. Then for score, which is the value, you have the 95 and 82. Print the name, that is the key. Then we add a column. Then you have and score. So what you use the F string for is to combine variables and strings together. So if I do this, let's say I pass in this column and I didn't use the F string, it's going to return error. So in this case, the F string will help us print name beside score. Then we're passing this string called the column. So if I print this, you see what happens. So it just prints it. Alex is 95, Bob is 82. And that is how you look at a dictionary. I'll go over it again, which is for name, score, in scores.items. And the last thing in this tutorial is using the zip method. And what the zip method does is to loop two lists together. So initially, we had a dictionary. Initially, we have a dictionary. Now, this dictionary already contains the keys and the value. But the list, we can have list in a different list where we have the names, and we have another list where we have the ages. So you can see this. So we have the names in a list, we have ages in another list, but we want to map the names and the ages together. So what we do here is we zip them. So when we zip them, the for loop, we see it as if it's a dictionary, just like dictionary we look through initially. So here we have for N and A, it could be anything. So but names, then ages, NA. So the names will become a key and the ages become the value. Then when we print it, we have Anna is 25 years old. Using the F string, I was able to write this, combining the string and the variable. Leo is 31 years old. Mia is 28 years old. And that right there is you having the basic to intermediate level of using for loop. Anything extended beyond this is going to be doing more complex logic and using them in more complex projects and processes. So if you've learned something from this video, feel free to subscribe and share it so others could benefit from it. And watch out for other videos that will be explaining different concepts in Python and machine learning so you can apply it to real life scenarios and be the best on your machine learning journey. Thank you.